Hello and welcome to the Atoll, your home for Waterworld fandom. On today's deep dive episode, we're investigating everything we know about the Mariner's Urine Purifier, the iconic device that introduces us to the universe of Waterworld in the very first minutes of the film. Let us kick off this video by introducing the Mariner's purifying system with a rather hilarious reading from the novelization of Waterworld. A yellow-stained glass beaker at his feet was no challenge for an aim long since perfected. His urine arced, and its splash into the glass was as gentle as that of the lazy waves the ship cut through. Soon he rebuttoned his pants, cut off jeans much older than he, and plucked the beaker of precious yellow fluid from the deck and proceeded to his homemade water recycling system. He poured the piss into the plastic funnel that began the process and stood tapping his foot while the liquid made its passage through the globes and filters and hoses and valves of a contraption whose design had been sold to him at an atoll by a wizened old trader who claimed the original inventor had been a very great scientist in the land days named Rube Goldberg. By the time the liquid finished its torturous journey and the spigot was turned and the stuff was allowed to puddle back into the original beaker, held beneath the contraption by the thirsty mariner, the urine's yellow cast was but a pale memory. He held the beaker to his lips and threw back his head and returned the liquid to his body, saving and sloshing one last gulp, cleaning his teeth and then spitting the remainder with his usual accuracy at the dirt around the potted lime tree. Wow, so there is a lot to unpack here. First off, the extravagantly romantic style of writing is classic Max Collins, and what makes the Waterworld novelization such a wild and fun read. The passage does a pretty nice job of describing the mechanism, though, that takes his urine and transforms it into that precious pure hydro. However, I believe that citing the cartoonist Rube Goldberg as the inventor of it is a real stretch, to say the least. Also, how hilariously disgusting is it that the mariner uses the same beaker he peed into to also drink out of once the fluid has passed through the recycling machine? At least the movie doesn't go that far. And interestingly, the young adult version of the novel excludes the pee drinking altogether. And yes, people either love or hate this cold open to the film. As Jenny Poroy puts it in the Making of Waterworld book, opening images don't get much more vivid than this one. A lone sailor on a lonely sea stands aboard a worn deck of his vessel and urinates into a Pyrex beaker. I, for one, love this opening image as it shows us without a word of dialogue exactly who the mariner is, a super sufficient loner that can take any found waste and transform it into a new means for survival. At this point, I would actually like to take us back to the original Peter Rader screenplay so that we can see that the Urine Purifier has been a part of Waterworld from its very earliest inception. In the Rader screenplay, which is drastically different from the final film and a totally fascinating topic for another video, the Urine Purifier is very present but with a slight twist. I will now read from Peter Rader's 1991 screenplay of Waterworld. A beaker. Fills up with his urine, pale yellow. No overdose of vitamins in this sample. Last few drops. He's done. Reaches to grab the beaker. A plastic funnel. The top of some kind of contraption. A large translucent funnel connected with a rubber hose that weaves down through a series of valves and filters. He pours the urine into the machine and we follow its progress downwards, through a paper filter, along a glass tube, down a rubber hose. Suddenly, we come to something that's organic in the chain. A large, slimy, steaming kidney. The organ pulses with the flow of liquid, processing it, pumping it out into the mechanical remainder of the contraption, which concludes in a copper faucet. Somehow, a living, organic kidney has been incorporated into this bizarre chain. But those familiar with anatomy will notice that it is working backwards. The urine is being forced into the wrong end of the kidney. Indeed, he places the beaker under the faucet and opens the spigot. Out rushes clean, pure H2O. He's reversed the excretion process, turned urine into water. So wow, much like the film, the Mariner, or Morgan as he's known in this early screenplay, uses a recycling machine to process his urine into drinkable water, but in this version, a live kidney from an unknown source is aiding in the purification of the fluids. This is an oddball detail that is totally in line with the more cartoonish vision that Rader had for his original version of Waterworld. Going back to the actual film, the Urine Purifier is tragically destroyed during the smokers' attack on the Atoll and the Mariner's subsequent escape. This places the Mariner and his new companions Helen and Enola in dire straits with only half a hydro ration to spare from the ruined purifier. If we now jump over to the extended edition of Waterworld, we are given an additional scene that explains the fate of the recycling machine. The Mariner partially repairs the recycling machine, and Helen and Enola contribute their own urine to be purified by the machine. The Mariner pumps the fluids through the machine in a reused shot from the first scene, and then drinks his ration and some, and then gives the rest to Enola, which Helen encourages her to drink every drop of. Now, if you're like me, you probably are wondering why the Mariner insists on purifying his own urine when he could just purify the ocean water that is constantly surrounding him. Well, this scene from the extended edition actually offers an explanation, to read from the novelization again, which also contains the same scene. He took the jars of urine from her, poured first one, then the other into the funnel. Then he poured a jar of his own in and cranked the pump. The machine was still leaking, but not as badly, and in a few moments, a trickle of nearly clear water flowed from the spigot and spattered into the glass beaker. "Why don't you just use sea hydro?" she asked. There was a tiny sneer of distaste on her full lips. "Salt's too hard on the filters," he said. When the last recycled drop fell, he held the beaker up to the sunlight. Its color was right, or right enough. He took a drink. And yes, this is in fact true. Human urine has less salt than seawater thanks to our kidneys filtering out extra water and waste from our blood, creating urine. So there is some validity to the Mariner only purifying his own urine. But the recycling machine meets its ultimate end after the smokers torch his boat and kidnap Enola, to quote again from the novelization. She, Helen, looked up and watched the Mariner as he walked with slumped shoulders, a dejected ghost haunting the ruins of his own house. He paused to finger charred bits of this and that, stood shaking his head wearily at the twisted wreck of his purifying gizmo. But where else can we find the Urine Purifier in the expanded universe of Waterworld? Well, I should point out that the video game Waterworld: The Quest for Dryland makes many mentions of a hydro-desal machine, which is pivotal to the survival of the Atollers in some of the earlier levels of the game. 2 Fleer Ultra cards are also dedicated to the Urine Purifier, with card number 10, Sea Life, and card number 141, Recycling Machine, which gives a description of the device. And the actual on-screen prop can be spotted in the front entrance of Universal Studios Hollywood's Waterworld, a live Sea War spectacular. If you're interested in the complete history of the live show, then be sure to go back and check out my video that's all about the show's enduring legacy. But the question still remains, can you actually purify your own urine and make it safe to drink? Well, actually, the answer is yes, but most likely not through a filtration system. While water purifiers are sold, their filters are not nearly fine enough to catch the impurities and waste that your kidneys have strained out. Only NASA has managed to create a filtering system so sophisticated that astronauts are able to recycle their own urine in space, and there are tablets that kill bacteria in unsafe water and urine, but these do not remove the waste products that your body works so hard to remove in the first place. However, There is the Solar Still, a simple device that can be created even in survival conditions that uses the power of condensation to purify any kind of unsafe water. The unsafe water or urine is placed in a hole or large container with another clean container in the center. A plastic sheet is then placed over the hole with a weight in the center. The pure water is drawn up to the sheet through evaporation, collected via condensation, and then forms droplets that fall into the clean container in the center of the Solar Still. Well, there you have it. That's everything we know about the Urine Purifier that introduces us to the universe of Waterworld in the first minutes of the film. A device not completely scientifically accurate, but makes for a really fun and wild opening for the film. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and checking out all my other Waterworld deep dives. The channel needs your support more than ever as we push towards 1,000 subs, so the simple act of clicking that subscribe button is more crucial than ever. And thanks, as always, for joining me at the Atoll.